once more into the fray. This is my third time trying to take this video and it's not working. Okay, so hi, I'm Taylor. And this is my December wrap up and I read a total of 11 books. I kept saying 12 in my last video, but that's why I'm scrapping that and it's just moving on. Usually I don't read a lot during like the school semesters because like I have to read the things they want me to read. But since they let me go from that diabolical prison of hopelessness, I get to read what I want. This is Faefever. It's part of the Dark Fever series. I honestly love this fucking... Ooh, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on here. Okay. So I love this fucking series, and I'm not ashamed to say it. A lot of people do have a problem with these books because it's technically supposed to be romance, and there's virtually no romance, like, at all. And I love it. And I don't know why, because, like, usually, like, when I read romance, I always end up picking up, like, erotica on accident, and it's just, like... And I'm not about that life. I mean, write what you want to write, girl. Like, I love it either way. This is a story about Michaela Lane. She lives in Ashford, Georgia, and she lives like a pretty simplistic, like high off the hog kind of life. Like she lives a pretty normal life. She's got a sister that's only a year or so older than her, not much older than her at all. And her sister does get into Trinity College in Ireland. And she, like, goes and lives there now, and she's kind of, like, Michaela's been on her own without her sister. She's kind of, like, lonely without her, but she still does her thing. Like, she's still living in, like, pretty much paradise, because this place is really sunny and nice all the time. And she gets a call one day that her sister was murdered in some alleyway one day. And, nobody is really trying to figure out what happened to her. Like, they keep calling and trying to figure it out, but with her being in America and her sister being overseas, like, nobody is really communicating well, and she's kind of just like, you know what, I'll just take care of it myself. Like, I'll avenge my sister, no problem. Like, I'll do what the Garda can't do. So she goes over there and she tries figuring it out. And when she first gets there, a woman says to her, like, why don't you go die somewhere else? Because she had seen this man sitting with a woman, and the woman just looked completely, like, decimated, like, skinny and sallow and kind of like what you would think Frankenstein's wife would look like. Like, literally, like, all the life was just sucked out of her and she was still, like, living. And it was directly because of the man sitting next to her. Like, every time he touched her, like, more and more life just seemed to spill out of her. And Michaela was very like, what is going on? And when the woman noticed her doing that, she was like, go die somewhere else. We don't want to die anymore here, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just her trying to figure, like, it's all magical and fairies and obviously Faefever. But I'm only going to tell you about the first one because I don't like talking about the second, third, fourth, fifth, because I know there's like 8 books in this or something like that. And I'm not going to tell you what this one was about. Just know that I really recommend this series, especially if you like some romance and not want to be, like, disgusted with constant erotica, I guess. Go for this. This is the darkest part of the forest. Gotta say, I had a lot of issues with it. I liked it, but issues. Like, first, they make it seem like the synopsis, definitely. The way, when I read it on Goodreads anyway, the way everybody was making it seem was it was a love story between Hazel and the Horn Boy, and then you get into it, and it's not at all, and I was just like, okay. I liked it, but I didn't like her brother, really. I didn't like the guy, Jack. I felt like Jack was, like, an unneeded character. Like, I know he had some significance, but I was just like, okay, like, he's here. He likes her. She likes him. But I want her to be with the Horn Boy. Felt like Jack was an unneeded character. Ben was kind of annoying. You don't see a lot of the Horn Boy. Like, he's there and then he's not. And he only says, like, 3 or 4 lines every time he is around. And it was just very, like, it was eventful, but it was not. The only part I really was just like, yes, bitch, yes, was Hazel wants to be a knight. And honestly, like, I've always wanted to be a knight too. So that was kind of like relatable. Like that was the only part that was relatable to me. And I love Holly Black. Like I never say anything bad about anything. But this one was like, I think it was overhyped. I was just like, yeah, like you were worth like 3.5 stars. Like I wasn't impressed. And I'm sorry, Holly, I love you. Next book I want to talk about though. Blew my whole mind. Like I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to really talk about it, because if I talk about it in a way that most people are gonna find like either offensive or weird, or maybe there's something wrong with me or like I'm legit insane. I read Stolen. It was beautiful. It was honestly like one of the greatest books I have ever read. I ate it up in like a day and a half. About this girl Gemma, she's like 16, going through her like little rebellious phase. Her and her parents are in Bangkok airport. I'm pretty sure it was one of those. And she's in the airport and she sees this guy and she said, "You noticed me before I noticed you, and then like when I saw you I couldn't look away." And turns out this guy has been stalking her for years, and he's been following her around since she left London, and he kidnaps her and takes her all the way to Australia. And it's literally how he's trying to get her to fall in love with him the way he's in love with her. And let me tell you, this woman right here, Lucy Christopher, you messed up my mind, because the whole book, why did I root for him? Like, he's the bad guy. Like, I know the way, like, yes, he's a kidnapper. Straight, simple, to the point. That's not excusable. He totally kidnapped her. But I was really bummed. Like, I really wanted them to be together. Like, I was hoping some way, somehow, like, she would change her mind and want to be with him. And I think what this author was going for was that she wanted you to feel like that, like the power of the human mind with different relationships, and if you're stuck out in the middle of the wilderness with just you and one other person, what can happen no matter the circumstances you were in. And it was just whoa. When I ended it, I was so bummed that it was a standalone, because I was like, please, you gotta tell me that there's another one. Now let me tell you about this next book. This next book, really, I hated it. I hated every moment I had to live with. Scorpio races. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I don't even know what else to say. Like, I know everyone knows about this book. It's pretty much Hidalgo with romance. And that's what captured me. Because let me tell you, everybody makes fun of the movie Hidalgo, but I loved it when I was a little kid. So, like, when they were like, Hidalgo with romance, I was like, ooh, girl, sign me up. So I went and bought it, like, the first time I heard a review about it, and someone was just like, oh my god, it's so great. It's like Hidalgo with romance. I know I've just said that like 5 times, but I don't care. It pisses me off that they use that punchline. And it wasn't even like that. It literally should have been, like, named, what did the girl say on Goodreads? Oh, the 380 pages leading up to the Scorpio races. Like, literally, like, you get 2.5 minutes. Like, it took me 2.5 minutes to read the Scorpio races part. And it wasn't worth it. It wasn't. Because the whole concept is kind of stupid. Like, this girl, Puck, wants to be in the races to make her brother not go back to this island or some stupid thing like that. Like, her brother's older and wants to move away and start his own life, and she doesn't want him to do it. And honestly, like, I thought she was kind of selfish for that. Like, let him go. Like, let him do his thing. Like, he's been taking care of you long enough. Like, you're getting old. Like, you're old enough to participate in a death race. I think you can live on your own. Like, I think you're good. Like, that's just me. She decides to get into this race so that she can, win all this money, so that she can win back her house and make sure that her and her brother, or like her little brother, are like all taken care of and what have you. But then there's this other boy, Sean Kendrick, and he's supposed to be like the love interest of the story, but the dude doesn't talk. And it took them 150 pages just to meet each other. It's a only 405 page book. It wasn't worth it. I'm like, Hidalgo with romance? I was like, Hidalgo had more romance. Actually, it was kind of a romance movie now that I'm thinking about it. Like, okay, so it took them 100 pages to meet each other. another 50 pages out after that so they actually spoke to each other the first time. And then it took another 75 for things to get even a little bit interesting. And then another 75 for more things to get interesting. And it was just not like... It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. Whatever. Another part of a series, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, da-da-da-da-da. I thought the sequel was better than the first book, to be completely honest. But I felt like the plot twists that did happen within Crown of Midnight, like, they were so obvious. Like, as soon as they introduced one of the, like, plot twists, that you, like, it was just, like, a name here and there. And I saw it, and I was just like, I know exactly what's going to happen. Like, this is so obvious. Like, just tell me right now, because you did just tell me right now, because that little subtle hint was all I needed, because it was just so obvious with the way she was going with the story. We're just gonna go with that. This is my 6th one. Vicious was one of the best books I have ever read in my whole fucking life. Like, it was so good. These two boys, they're in, like, pre-med of college, Victor and Eli. They decide that they're, since they're pre-med, they have to do, like, a senior thesis, and their senior theses have to do with, like, Victor's was, like, what happens to the human body when adrenaline hits, that they temporarily become like a superhero. So that's his thesis. But then Eli went a step further and decided that he just wanted to see, like, if EOs, like extraordinary people, like, actually existed. There's what happened to them in college, and then 10 years later. And the book starts off of you knowing that Victor just broke out of prison. So that's all I'm gonna tell you, because I don't want to ruin it. And then I read Scythe. This book had me, like, really, like, sitting there, like, philosophically thinking about death a lot. Like, this book really had me messed up for a couple days. Because, like, it was just an abundance of death. Like, every page was something about dying and killing, and the philosophical point of view of dying, and, like, what's the wrong and right way to kill somebody, and it was just, like, okay. To take in, and it was awesome. I loved it. Like, this is a world that has, like, how did I give the punchline to my mom when I told her I wanted her to read it? I think I said Mr. Nobody meets, like, Death Everything. Like, everything. Like, Mr. Nobody meets Grim Reapers. That's how I put it. Like, if you've ever seen Mr. Nobody with Jared Leto, like, the first 15 minutes of the movie is, like, pretty much what their world is like. Like, there's no hunger, there's no disease, like, there's no war. Okay. A world with no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery. Humanity has conquered all those things and has even conquered death. So now that nobody is dying, like, how do you stop the world from being overpopulated by humans? Like, they do only have so much. Like, yes, they have conquered all of these things, but they still need to, like, it's because everything is so, like, organized by the Thunderhead. Thunderhead, I guess, is, like, their version of the internet now. And the Thunderhead, like, knows everything. Like, it's, like, a god, pretty much, in its own right. But the Scythes, the people who kill the other people, don't have any access to the Thunderhead, and the Thunderhead has no access to the Scythe. So, it's all very weird how they have, now that there's so many people in the world, you have to keep the population down somehow. So, they started this order of Scythes, or pretty much, like, Grim Reaper types, that these people are trained to kill in every possible way, and they're sent out and they're told to meet a quota, like cops with parking tickets. Like, it's really, like, a really weird concept, but it makes sense, too, because, like, if everybody's immortal, how do you stop people from, like, one of the main purposes of humans and being a human is procreating and putting on to your best qualities to the next generation, and da-da-da-da. So how do you stop people who can literally live forever? Like, no one is actually dying now. So, it's about this girl, Citra, I always want to call her Citrus, Citra and Rowan, or the boy is Rowan, about how they become apprentices and have to master the art of killing and just the trials and tribulations of going through that, because I will not say any more after that. Like, Citra and Rowan are apprentices to this guy, Scythe Faraday, and Scythe Faraday is like, he reminds me of V for Vendetta a little bit, and I think that's why I liked him so much. But this was a good read. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Kind of frightening that, like, that could be, like, how the world ends up one day. Like, you never know, and it's just, like, it's like passages. It's fucking creepy. The next one I read was the Awake at Dawn, the second one in the Shadows Fall series. It was good. It was alright. I really like Kylie's character. Like, I think she's a really good role model for, like, young teenage girls. Like, she really, like, a lot of the issues brought up in both of the books, because this is, like, a double feature book. A lot of the issues brought up are, like, around sex and boys and knowing your identity and da-da-da-da. And I think Kylie is a pretty, like, strong role model with that, because she doesn't let people pressure her into doing things. Like, I know a lot of girls get pressured to be doing anything sexual, like, of any sexual nature, and she's just totally like, I'm gonna do what I want when I want to do it, and if I want to do it, I'm gonna do it, and if I don't want to do it, I'm definitely not gonna do it, so don't be testing me. And I think girls should read this so that they can have, like, the same attitude. The second one I just felt like was the same issues, just 2.0, and just spun a different way, and it was just like, okay, can we get to the, like, point? But there was also, what I didn't like was there was kind of, like, a contradiction, like how I just said, like, when she doesn't want to do something, she doesn't do it. There's a boy, Derek, who, they both have, like, obvious feelings for each other, and Derek is a fairy, and, sorry, my voice just cracked right there, and he has the ability to manipulate emotions, and you can tell that, like, he can manipulate her emotions at any given time, and I just don't like him for that, like, simple reason, because, like, at any moment, like, he could just be doing whatever the hell he wants, and that's not what we want up in here. So I read another Holly Black. This is the first one I read, and then I read, well, this isn't the first Holly Black book I've read, but I read, Darkest Part of the Forest after I read this one. This one I did give 5 out of 5 stars just for the ending alone, because that shit was crazy. It was honestly, like, this was one of the cooler vampire stories that I've read. Like, it had a really different spin, and I liked that it was more of, like, a disease than it was a, well, I mean, it definitely is a lifestyle. Like, if you're gonna be a vampire, that's definitely a change of life. I really liked the different spin on vampires, because I feel like it's the same old shit. Like, ever since Twilight, like, don't get me wrong, I like Twilight. I read Twilight. I read it a dozen times. Like, that was my thing. That's what got me into YA in the first place. Actually, no, it's not. Holly Black was when I read Tithe. I'll lie to you. I read Tithe, and then I started reading Twilight, because people were, like, my librarian when I was, like, in middle school after I read Tithe was like, oh, maybe you should try these. I heard this one's getting really popular, and it was Twilight. And then the franchise started. Like, this was a cooler spin on vampires. It reminded me more of Anne Rice's vampires, but, like, better. Because, like, Anne Rice's vampires can have, like, their emotions, but there's no, like, sexual prowess to them at all. And I was kind of, like, I loved Gabrielle. Gabrielle was a really cool character, and I liked that you got to learn his backstory and all that, too. Whereas in the Darkest Part of the Forest, like, you learn a little bit about Severin, the Horned Boy's, backstory, but then you really don't learn shit at the same time. So I liked that you knew a lot about him, as well as knowing a lot about Tana. Tana? Tana. I called her Tana in my head, so I'm just gonna go with that. Whatever. Now, I have 2 more books left, and I think those 3, and Stolen and Vicious, were, like, my top, because they were, and I love them. So, I read Shadow and Bone, and I'm gonna tell you straight up, I gave these 5 stars, because everybody knows about these. I'm not gonna go into great detail about what the actual synopsis is about. I love my train of thought. But Shadow and Bone was probably one of the crazier books I've read all year, because it really was just like, wow, like twist for twist. Because like, as Throne of Glass with all her plot twists, like, they're obvious, like, they're cool twists. Like, I really like where the story is going. Like, I'm glad that she's finally getting away from Dorian and all that. But this, like, when she gave you a plot twist, Leigh Bardugo was not playing with you. Like, she gave you a plot twist where you were sitting there, like, I actually had it open. I was like, you're fucking playing. And, like, my boyfriend looked over at me and he was like, oh my god, what happened? And I'm like, I can't even get into it because, like, it's, whoa. This was great. It was great. I know I said that about a couple of them already, but whatever. I have the next book on my shelf right there. It's that really blue one right there. I think I might put up a video about my book haul over the last couple of months, because I do have all of those books up there that have been pretty much the last month. I think I got those. Like, the majority of them I got with Christmas gift cards and stuff like that. But then I have a bunch of books on the floor right over there in boxes that I have no room for on my shelves anymore. And those are, I think I got those in November. I go to a lot of library sales, so I can get like a bunch of books without spending a lot of money. And Amazon is the shit. But I think I might put one of those videos up too. But I'm not really good with haul videos, and I think haul videos are kind of boring. Synopsis yet? And like give you a decent synopsis where you're like, oh, okay, I want to try that out. So I'm debating it. I think I just might put a picture up on my Instagram and be like, I have a problem. That's probably what I'm gonna go with. So I read Siege and Storm. It was awesome. The Darkling is like my new boyfriend. Well, not my new boyfriend. Like, you know, your book crushes, like, he's my new book crush because he was just... And the last book I want to talk about took me by complete and utter surprise. I had no idea that I was actually gonna like it. Like, I hated it. Like, I was like, where did I actually start to like it? I think it was already like 150 pages in where I was like, ooh, this is actually pretty good. Demons exist in this world, like, and they're known to people. Everyone makes deals, but instead of like giving your soul, they want body parts. So the demons, like, they'll give you your deal, but you're gonna have to have like a prosthetic, and a lot of people do have prosthetics now because they give up arms, they give up legs, toes, fingers, the whole nine. Like, whatever you can give, they'll take. Dee, the main character, Dee Moreno, she comes from like a really bad home life. Her dad's like the definition of a dick, like, of that bad dad that you never want to be around. And the mom is just like non-existent and oblivious and like totally in her own little world. But Dee goes to a boarding school because of this, and she got a scholarship to get in. But at one point, I guess the school lost funding. He needed to either cut the art department or cut the scholarship kids. And being a fancy smancy boarding school, they cut the other kids instead of the art department because a lot of the kids do use the art department or whatever. So they were like, you can either come up with the money or we're going to have to like send you back to regular like public school. And she was like, well, that ain't happening. But she wasn't about to just like give anything up to a demon either. Like, she wasn't trying to make a deal. But the other thing is, demons don't show up to you unless you want to make a deal. So at some point she did and just didn't like she just didn't want to say it kind of thing. But then, obviously, the whole synopsis like tells you, yeah, this bitch gave up her heart and whatever. But this specific demon wants hearts. He doesn't want body parts or anything like that. He wants their heart. So she gives up her heart, and then, like, they're pretty much, like, they have no pulse, they have, like, no nothing. And it's, like, her falling in love with somebody who also is heartless, and it was just... I don't even want to talk about it. I'm gonna cry again. I cried when I read this book. Like, the last, like, 30 pages just had me sobbing. I was just like, why? But I'm not gonna tell you why, because it was great. And... I mean, the first 150 pages, I'm going to tell you, sucked. Like, they were shit. But once you get past the first 150 pages, like, it's literally worth it, because, like, everything, like, makes sense after a while. So that was, oh, I'm gonna switch these around so I can take a cool, smanchy, fancy picture. No, I'm not. When you try to be cool and you just suck at it. Here are some of them. Sayonara, dudes.